It's very interesting seeing people try and trigger like Zelda cycle arguments for newer Zelda games. I think people were kind of blindsided by the release of Echoes of Wisdom because I certainly wasn't expecting a new Zelda game so soon. I was expecting one like a couple of years after Tears of the Kingdom. I thought we would get a remake or something. I was not expecting it to be like a year later, right? Like a brand new Zelda game from another team with a unique mechanic, with a unique feature, playing as Princess Zelda, right? It is super hype. Yeah, right. It is phenomenal. Very exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. Everybody I know is looking forward to it. But there have been very blatant attempts at trying to downplay this game. And it's a lot of it's like no different than what we typically see from certain people. I saw the BitBlock like complain about having to play as like a female character because like he's such a homosexual that he doesn't like playing as women in games or playing with them in real life, right? Like he doesn't like women at all, is what I'm saying. You have like Sean Malmstrom like complaining about the art style, Mike Matei like, oh, this game's for pussies. Oh, like again, there's no reason to think that the game is like any less difficult than Link's Awakening or Tears of the Kingdom or whatever, right? To me, it just seems like a cope from a bunch of fanboys trying to like demonize modern Nintendo, right? Like this is like like you have a lot of dudes in their 30s, 40s, 50s like trying to say like, oh, Zelda Nintendo was way cooler when I was a kid, like. Okay, so if that's true, then why aren't you like doing something else? Like, why don't you go take care of your kids, grandpa? Like, why don't you go water your lawn or like go bird watching? Like, do something other than try and like ruin other people's fun, right? That's my genuine opinion on that is that like I have nothing but contempt for people who are like trying to talk down about the Nintendo Direct, right? I've seen like some people like go after Mario and Luigi Brothership. They don't know anything about the games, but they're oh, it's so terrible, bros. I've seen people try to go after Metroid Prime 4. Hideki Kamiya of all people try to go after Metroid Prime 4. But okay, you are the last person to complain about a game taking too long in development. Supervisor of Bayonetta 3. For the longest time, Bayonetta 3 and Metroid Prime 4 were like the Switch games that we didn't know anything about. Like again, fuck off with that bullshit, you retard. But anyway, again, I'm not happy with Camilla. So yeah, Camilla's take was retarded. Get the fuck out of here, you retard. Anyway, but yeah, when it comes to Echoes of Wisdom specifically, I think it is getting the brunt of it because the narrative up until recently was that like, oh, Nintendo doesn't make top-down Zelda anymore. Oh, they don't respect old school fans. They don't do this. They don't do that. Like, oh, like I just want a top-down Zelda. And then okay, they put it out, and what happens? That's not what I wanted. Like every time they do this, right? Whether it's like complaining about Zelda not having a sword or complaining about the art style or complaining about the new mechanics, like they always cry about a new Zelda game not being exactly like a new one. Exactly like the old one, right? Every single time, right? It's typical Zelda cycle stuff, right? Right. This is an epidemic, right? And we kind of saw that a little bit of this, like with Tears of the Kingdom. Actually, a lot of this. I would say like a big part of like why Tears of the Kingdom had such a weird reputation online, in spite of how popular it is entirely because of Zelda cycle stuff. But with like Echoes of Wisdom, like it's interesting because people are trying to make the same kind of arguments, but they're falling flat, right? Like when you see like people complain about the gameplay in Echoes of Wisdom. First of all, we haven't seen very much of the game yet, right? Like you don't know like exactly what your limitations are or like how the game is going to play or like what's going to happen in the plot, and yet you're seeing people like make all these weird assumptions like, oh, it looks like it's for kids, oh, it looks like Minecraft, oh, it looks like oh, it looks kitty. Like come on, like again, a lot of the people who are complaining about Echoes of Wisdom grew up with Wind Waker, right? So like it's so weird. Like we I Zelda fans have like spent the past 20 years making fun of people who made fun of Wind Waker's art style, right? Like it's just to us it's just like a complete joke considering like how iconic that game's visual style has become and how it's like such a big essential like aesthetic, arguably like one of the most memorable aesthetics Zelda has ever had, right? Zelda Wind Waker was great. right? And like seeing people like repeat like history like this, like complaining about the art style is just it's just absurd to me. But yeah, I talked about the no sword thing before, but I think the reason that I really wanted to make this video, and one of the biggest copes I think I have seen from like new Zelda haters, well, I hate saying new, uh, open world Zelda detractors, right? Like I don't know what to call these people yet, but um, there is this very big pervasive narrative among the community that having open-ended puzzles is bad, right? Like, oh, you can just cheese your way through everything in the game if you play the game. You know, like I get to them like being able to like solve puzzles through multiple means, like by being innovative, by thinking outside the box, that's bad. Oh, you need to be railroaded. You need to like be getting this key to open this door, to go in this room, to fight this enemy, to like get this other key, to like get the compass or whatever. Like again, like they have this very limited idea of what Zelda should be, right? In their minds, like Zelda should just rehash Ocarina over and over and over again, you know, like a Dark Souls game, right? It should never evolve. And it's the same mindset that like NES Zelda fanboys have, is that like the idea that like Zelda should be hardcore and badass and be really difficult instead of like, you know, actually innovating, instead of actually doing something new and different and exciting, right? Like this is the mindset of people who don't want to admit that the brand has grown past them, essentially. Like to me, whenever I see people like sit there and cry about Echoes of Wisdom, like, oh no, you can solve puzzles in multiple ways. Like, what's the big deal? Like in practice, this doesn't amount to anything, right? Like if you've played Breath of the Wild, if you've seen Tears of the Kingdom, you've seen how like how entertaining it is to figure out to figure out a room, to figure out how you're going to get past it, like to figure out like all the mechanics you can use and all the abilities you have and all the things you can do. Like it's endlessly entertaining and fun. Like and of course like classic Zelda is fun too. No one's ever going to take that away from it. Like those games are iconic for a reason, but like diminishing the new open world formula, right? The new design philosophy of like being able to tackle solutions to puzzles in many different ways, like rewarding your own ingenuity and skill. Like I think that mindset is disgusting, right? You're not appreciating the game design, you're not appreciating like the creativity, you're not really understanding what makes these games great, honestly. Like you're just complaining for the sake of complaining. Because does it diminish the experience of playing through the areas? Does it diminish like the feeling where you overcome a challenge? Like no, of course not. And that is very demonstratable by simply playing through Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. But you have a lot of people who are religiously obsessed with pushing this narrative that somehow, for some reason, this style of game design is bad. That Nintendo doesn't know what they're doing, and that this is somehow devaluing the Zelda brand because they're not making the puzzles linear. Like again, like the videos I've seen on this subject don't even really have a clear point, other than the fact like, oh, it's different now when like the changes are clearly an improvement in a lot of ways and add a lot to the experience, right? Like the only thing I would say they take away from is that like maybe the main dungeons aren't as good. Right. Like I have always like observed that like, you know, Breath of the Wild, the Tears of the Kingdom's dungeons are a step down from Skyward Swords, from Twilight Princesses, from Wind Waker's, right? like like that is like that's a real noticeable thing, right? Like it is a noticeable downside, but like you know when you look at the thing like the plus sides, right? When you look at like all the crazy amount of content, the open world, the new mechanics, like I think it's a perfectly reasonable trade-off. Like yeah, do I want good dungeons to come back eventually? Well, better dungeons, they are good. Like do I want better dungeons to come back eventually? Yeah, sure, but it's something they're gonna have to learn how to grow into, right? You know, blending the new style with like, you know, satisfactory dungeon design. And they've already done this a lot. You know, Breath of the Wild had the unique idea of like moving the dungeons around, right? And then Tears of the Kingdom had more traditional designs, right? And again, like you're not really seeing people acknowledge that. You're not seeing people like, you know, praise Nintendo for their creativity. No, they just want to sit there and complain. And to me, it's very sad to see because I think Echoes of Wisdom is going to be a very interesting little Zelda game with a lot of really interesting aspects to it. And who knows, this might be the Zelda game that really manages to deliver on those classic dungeons. But we're going to have to wait and see.